away. All right, so I want us to have that conversation that I have been promising for a couple of minutes now. Let me introduce my panel of guests. I'll start from my immediate left, and I have Houghton Irungu, thank you very much for joining us. He is the Executive Director of Chapter 1, but today he's here as a representative from the Response Able campaign. You'll be talking to us more about that later on. We also have Professor Maurice Amutabi, who's the Vice Chancellor of Lukenya University, but he's also a political analyst. Thank you very much for your time. We also have the lady in the panel, Shafa Okore, who's also a political analyst. Thank you very much for your time. All right, gentlemen and lady, I want us to start from the really disturbing incident that happened yesterday. We cannot really underscore just how critical this is, especially in this period that we're waiting for the elections, just 6 days away. Houghton, I'd like to hear from you. The big question has been, who would want Chris Msando dead and why?
Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, just to acknowledge that this is probably one of the most shocking developments of this elections. I mean, there have been many people who have lost their lives, but I think this particular one, I think, has resonated across the 47 counties. I appreciate the assurance by the DCI that they will leave no stone untouched, that they will try and find the killers as quickly as possible. But I think it's important to recognize that, you know, 4 days ago, perhaps maybe 3-4 million people knew who he was. Yeah. But now 47 million people know who he was, and he's actually on the international headlines across the world, from the BBC to the International Herald Tribune. So he is an international story now, and it is really important that in order to stop the speculation, they actually apprehend his killers immediately. Who killed him? It has to be forces that do not want these elections to succeed, who do not want credible elections, who do not want the IEBC to be impartisan and independent, and who want to create a state of fear and siege in this country. That's the people who killed Chris.
All right. Professor, it seems like this election, seemingly, you know, with the events that have happened over the last couple of days, it seems like it's a do-or-die situation.
Right.
Should it be like that?
I don't think it should be like that, Betty. That's a good question, because it appears like all sides are pushing it so hard, as if their lives and everything else is predicated on the outcome of this election. But it should never be like that. In democracy, space should be given for all participants, and that it should never appear as if it's a die, you know, situation like we are seeing right now. The tension in the country almost got heightened by these murderous scenes that we have seen and so on. And the call to Kenyans, I think, is to remain calm, because if anything happens, because we know that this can be a trigger, because Msando comes from a family, he has friends and relatives and so on. This can be a trigger to other issues, but we are happy that the security forces have stepped in to assure Kenyans that they're doing everything possible to apprehend those responsible for this.
All right.
The issue is that there are CCTV cameras all over the city, and we know that they are looking at the footage at all the places he went to, and that very soon the culprit should be apprehended and brought before the courts of law.
And talking about that, and you know, the investigations that are currently ongoing, you know, there are people who are saying that, you know, will we really get to the bottom of this, Shafa? We've had quite a number of other high-profile individuals in this country who've died, who were murdered, and up to now we're still waiting for answers. Are we likely to get answers to who killed Msando?
I'm still in shock.
Right.
Just the idea of discussing another dead body, someone who is so fundamental in the process of delivering a credible election this year, is still shocking to me. And the fact that he's just one name after another, and we are hoping so deeply as Kenyans and as individuals that, honestly, for the first time in this country, can the laws that are used, the laws that are in the Constitution, be used to capture the people who are trying to completely hold this country hostage? Because, you know, it's gotten to a point where it's become so casual. It's like we're trying to normalize the idea of, oh, Betty disappeared yesterday, and we are now on a clock. So in 48 hours, Betty's body should be found, you know, murdered and mutilated. And we can see evidence. There's evidence of foul play that has been there, even by the police. They're talking about, or we can see that maybe his arm was broken, you know, body parts are missing. It is terrifying. And we're hoping that this could be, or this should be the last of this, and we should not be experiencing this, especially now. The country is too fragile, the country is too delicate going into an election like this, and the fact that we have people somewhere who are so afraid of a credible, free and fair election should worry all of us.
All right.
Should worry all of us terribly.
Houghton, let's talk about the role that he played. And, you know, as late as Friday, I'm sure you've seen in our reports, he was here at KTN and he was just speaking very confidently about how the system is foolproof and will not have dead voters coming out to vote on that day. Wasn't that a good thing? I mean, wasn't that what Kenyans actually want? A free, fair, and credible and very verifiable election?
Very much. I mean, I spent 2 hours with him on Friday morning between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock on NTV. And there was a panel just like this where we were talking about, you know, how prepared were we for the elections. And he was extremely eloquent. He was very clear. He was also guarded in terms of the system, so he protected those systems. And I think, you know, really at this point, we just have to say that he has given his life in service of this nation and in service of a free and fair elections, and we must honor him. And I think, you know, the condemnation, I think shock is one thing, but actually outrage is probably a more appropriate way of dealing with this, and that we need to see this from the political parties, from citizens generally. I know at this moment, in the next 30 minutes, a group of citizens are gathering at Uhuru Park to essentially demand justice for Msando. And there's actually a hashtag that's been developed now, which will essentially rally Kenyans to make sure that you know, the public pressure is there, that the security forces find out what happened and under what circumstances was he killed, and also how is this, if it has jeopardized the election? Has it created vulnerabilities within the cybersecurity that is so necessary for these elections?
All right. Professor, I like what Irungu has just talked about. What really would be the implications now that Msando is no more? What kind of responsibility does the IEBC now have to ensure that whoever is going to be in his place is actually going to do exactly what Msando would have done?
That's a good question, Betty, because we gather information that he was the custodian, chief custodian of the ICT infrastructure at IBC. We also gather that he had critical passwords to critical information, especially regarding the electoral system. We also are aware that there were intrigues about his station, and that he had made reports to police about his safety, about his life. So it's indicative that people are interested in accessing the electoral system, and they are interested in actually coercing him to release information in regard to that. We also think I've heard and read social media and other places that the IBC infrastructure is made in such a way that it's foolproof, that not one individual can be custodian of everything, but he was the chief custodian.
Yes.
And that's critical, meaning that he had almost all the critical passwords. So one doesn't know whether before he was killed, he was coerced to give out these passwords, and that's why he was killed, or that he refused to give out this critical information about passwords, and that's why he was killed.
All right.
So what one can say, the general gesture, the general feeling, and the general, I think, anxiety about everybody, that it is about the system, the electoral system, which he was in charge of. So right now, I think we leave everything speculation in terms of what will have happened.
All right.
Did they get the passwords, or did they not get the passwords?
Right.
That leaves conjecture. But one will imagine that there must be other people around him who are privy to this information in terms of securing the electoral system. That in case this was compromised, they can go up and patch up and create new passwords and so on to disable or not enable those who have taken the passwords to access the system. So that can be guaranteed by IBC, if they have sealed those loopholes, that the electoral process will be free and fair.
It will be free and fair. Shafa, one of the things that IBC has been battling with for the last, since they were installed in the commission, is trust and, you know, that confidence that Kenyans have had. And there were polls maybe a month ago, maybe now they've become better, that, you know, put the confidence of Kenyans in the IBC at 49%, which is really not, you know, the best, you know, especially just 6 days to the elections. What do you think will be the impact of Msando's death on the whole electoral process? I
think we're already seeing one of them. One of them is just the idea of there's just an overwhelming fear now amongst voters, especially those who are in places that are known to be hotspots of violence during election. And we are, because I work with a lot of people in the grassroots and in Mathare and Kibera and Isilina, we have dialogues there.
Right.
The one thing that this has made them realize is that we are not safe here anymore. Let's go back to where we came from and just stay with our own people and just be indoors when all this, so all this can go away somehow, which I think is worrying, because that could be one of the reasons why the people who killed him did this, above and beyond just wanting access or passwords or passcodes or whatever, just to create fear. So people feel so suppressed and so helpless that they don't even want to vote anymore. And they're saying it's not worth it if it comes to life and death. We'd rather go home. I think that's a big problem right now that so many stakeholders need to address, especially the IEBC, just constantly reassuring, because building that trust, as much as we already had the trust issues, so you can imagine how this has taken them way, way back. So, it's just a matter of constantly assuring people that no matter what they took from him, if they accessed anything, that is still not going to be used to kind of, completely demobilize the idea of credible election. And also that the person who steps in his place or not is going to be secure, and we are still on course with delivering a credible election at the end of the day, because we need Kenyans to come out.
And whose
if anything, we need to honor him. I think everybody's, and it should be led by one person. It's everybody's responsibility. It should be led by the IEBC, because this touches on them in ways I cannot even imagine. And then even political parties, the candidates themselves, the key candidates themselves, and all of us as voters and the electorate, we should be able to just say the only way we are going to honor the death of this man is not by just saying we won't forget, but by coming out and voting, because I think he worked so hard to ensure that the election was going to be credible.
All right.
That for us to be terrified that we don't want to take part in it is just worrying.
All right.
Maybe just to add on that one. I mean, there's two sides. I mean, if you think about, Chris Msando was also a voter. So we have lost a voter.
A voter, yes.
So I think, the clarion calls really should be out there. I am voting for Chris Msando.
Exactly.
Let us all come out in large numbers, 19 million of us that are registered. Let us come out in large numbers and vote in his honor and in the honor of an electoral democracy that we believe in.
All right. I want us to put something in perspective, and it's really the process of Chris Msando being found. First of all, and it goes back to just how our police works. His body was found on Saturday, but then 48 hours later, another section of police is still looking for, for Chris Msando. What does that say about our processes? And even going back to what happened over the weekend, in the DP's home, and also putting in special focus, IEBC officials, shouldn't they be protected, especially, this time? Yes. I'll start with you, Rungu.
Well, I mean, definitely, I think all the IEBC officials should receive maximum protection at this point. I think we also need to see protection I guess, improved for some of the major candidates in the elections, because they're obviously a threat. And I think the other concern is, in the case of, we had the police spokesperson on earlier talking about where the confusion was in terms of his forces or his service men and women. But I think the important thing is that it's really too long. 48 hours is really too long for us to lose somebody that was to have not known where somebody who was so critical for the elections is. I mean, that's much too long, particularly in terms of what may have happened to him, as we hear.
All right, Professor.
Yes, and then I think it raises questions about our investigative potential and capacity.
Completely.
In fact, in their comments on social media, which are indicating that probably the proper investigation, of course we trust our police will do a thorough investigation, but are those calling for outside the intervention, like FBI, CIA and so on, to come and help the potential. Because if you look at a car being recovered on Thika Road, somewhere in Roysambu, and the person is missing, you'll want to do a thorough search in terms of where this person disappeared, was last seen on the CCTV cameras within the city. And then secondly, he has a phone. And every phone everybody has in this country can be tracked.
Can be tracked, yes.
By Airtel or Safaricom. Those are the major service providers. If you are missing and they find out your phone number from the last person you called, most likely maybe his wife or son or daughter or relative, you can actually trace this individual within a shortest time possible because of the GPS and the GIS locations and so on. What I think I know is raising anxiety among many Kenyans is that it took so long to bring this to book in terms of 48 hours. And I know that police right now are apprehensive because there are many things taking place. There are political campaigns, rallies, and so on. So it's probably that the attention is divided on other issues. But I think if you look at the magnitude of this individual in terms of what he holds, in terms of the electoral process in this country, in the next few days, we are going to rely on a structure that actually he was in charge of. It really required, I think, more big attention to his disappearance than what was received. But I think we'll give police credit because eventually he was tracked down and that his body was found thanks to the police.
All right, Shefa, as we close this conversation, does it go back to, how, we have been a reactive country, in so many instances, something happens and then, we react. Now the Chebukati, the chair of IEBC, came out yesterday and said, I want protection for my commissioners, for people who are deeply involved in the election. But is it coming too late in the day, briefly?
I think yes or no, because first of all, I think Chris was talking about his life is being threatened for a while.
Yes.
It's been out there. So the question is, why is there laxity in regards to response to claims like this when someone claims my life is being threatened and they know, and we all know what he represented in the election process? Why was there laxity? And even in the way we have seen state machinery be able to, capture people, bloggers and whatnots, and who have you, the small fish, and be able to prosecute, and people end up in jail.
Right.
How is it that we are not as effective, as fast when it comes to matters like this?
Okay.
Why is there seemingly an intentional way in which we are just so lax when it comes to things that hold our country in such a way that could lead us to hell?
Okay.
Why do we relax so much in regards to how we respond, how we carry out investigations, how we even pass information? Why is there laxity when it comes to this?
Very many questions. Very many questions. And you can imagine if you have the questions, what about the Kenyan? Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. We'll continue with our conversation. We have quite a number of other issues to discuss here on the show. Remember that yesterday IBC was supposed to be testing the technology, but that of course could not happen, and it will be happening later on in the week. Maybe tomorrow we'll be discussing that and so much more here on the show. All right, so we will be taking a break right now. Our first hour is almost coming to an end, but we understand that the KDF spokesperson is going to be issuing a statement in the next few moments. We'll be covering that for you live. We also understand that Professor Anyang' Nyong'o and James Orengo will also be issuing a statement from Kisumu in regards to the murder of Mr Msando. That's going to be happening in a short while, and we'll be covering that also for you here on the show. So for now, we'll take that break. Don't go away. Kivumbi2017 continues shortly.